How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and as you can see, we're back at it talking about the Amazons. And folks, now that we have entered 2025, let's deep dive numerous players that could find themselves returning. Yes, you heard that correctly. Returning to the New York Mets for as soon as this 2025 season. We're going to deep dive these players and ultimately why David Stearns and co. could have interest in bringing back these guys either from the 2024 year for 2025 or from previous seasons before the David Stearns regime there with the New York Mets. So let me see your initial reactions to it all in the comments down below, everybody. We're going to get into all these players, the pros, the cons, the likelihood, unlikelihood of them returning to Flushing, Queens, and everything in between, along with thanking you guys further for 30,000 subscribers. And because we have hit 30K, everybody, I will be giving away a Juan Soto jersey to one lucky subscriber. And all you guys got to do to enter are the following steps. One, make sure you're subscribed to the platform. I think that goes without asking. And two, make sure you're chiming into our live stream January 7th here on the platform, sometime in the evening, similar timing to what we're doing today, right around 7:15, 7:20 or so is when we'll be live today, and we'll be live again on January 7th, and whoever is commenting in the live chat of that stream, I will randomly click on a comment that you guys will spam comments in. I'll say, all right, get set, ready, go. Start spamming your comments, say me, that I want to be the winner. I'll randomly click on a comment. Whoever I click on, you will be the jersey winner, just like we have done with previous giveaways in the past. It's a lot of fun for interaction throughout the live shows and gives you guys further incentive to make sure that you're chiming in the live streams. That way you have your questions, comments, remarks answered by yours truly throughout our segments each and every week. So thank you guys again for the support there. Shout out to Juan Soto, shout out to the Mets, and yes, shout out to BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook, but more on them a little bit later on in the show, folks, because let's kickstart things with, I will have this in no particular order in the sense I don't have this on a ranking of a top 5 list or anything like that, everybody, but let's get into the first player that I have been crying for to come back to the Mets all year long, and that is our dominant southpaw. That is our guy, and Brooks Raley. Listen, Brooks Raley might have missed pretty much the entire 2024 season that we saw with reconstructive Tommy John surgery. Doesn't change the fact that I want Brooks Raley back with this Mets team as soon as humanly possible. Sign him, have him continue his rehab into 2024 with the Mets, 2025 rather. Got to make sure it's a new year here. And when he is ready to go and actually can produce for the Mets again, I'd imagine sometime in the second half of the year, if not the first half, because he did pitch in 8 outings for the Mets this past season, 7 or 8 pitched to a 0-0 ERA. Expected numbers weren't as favorable for him, but regardless, Raley was absolutely nails when everything else was awry for the Mets in the first week or two of the season. Then we see Raley go down with the TJ, and since then he has been on the shelf. But Raley, who was absolutely a glaring hole for this Mets bullpen by losing him, because they did not have that dominant, that true southpaw option in the bullpen. They tried with Jake Diekman, and that was certainly a recipe for disaster. They tried with Danny and Alex Young with only flashes of success. They need a certainty there, and while I would like them to have more than Brooks Raley as a certainty entering 2025, he at minimum should be in the mix to return this Mets team with potentially a 1, if not second-year option that could go in hand with how many innings he finds himself pitching and contributing to the Mets here in 2025. Brooks Raley, a multi-pitch mix that I absolutely love. He has really refound his game from going back to the KBO a couple years ago to then coming back to the States, spent some time in the Astros organization, pre-KBO, post-KBO, Tampa Bay Rays, now New York Mets. He was dominant for the Mets last year that we saw, and there's no question that a guy that can actually sit, right around mid-90s on the heater and can actually give you some velocity and give you some differentiation between that, the off-speed and breaking pitches. The Mets simply don't have a lot of guys like Brooks Raley and how he profiles in this bullpen, so that's simply put along with the nasty off-speed and breaking pitches. I need to see this man back in Queens dominating at this Mets bullpen again. So Brooks Raley, add him to the list. That's absolutely, man, that I would love to see return to the Mets. And for David Stearns, you have very few lefty options in this bullpen as is. Makes all the more reason and then some to bring back Brooks Raley should there be mutual interest and add him to this pen and contribute for as soon as this 2025 season, everybody. But now, folks, let's get into from Brooks Raley to talking about now another reliever, and that is going to be, yes, Mr. Ryan Stanek, the flame-throwing Ryan Stanek, the man that's absolutely going to yell F-bombs left, right, and center there on the mound after punching you out, and that's just how he's going to do it. Stanek, after faltering throughout a good chunk of the season with the Seattle Mariners in the first half last year, after having a lot of great success with the Houston Astros and their deep playoff runs in recent years, including a postseason 2 2.2 or so ERA, which he attributed that and then some for the Mets in this year's postseason. He was one of our few most reliable guys in the pen when we need him most. Stanek, after being acquired by the Mets, had some really shaky outings and then really settled down. As long as the walks are really in control, Ryan Stanek has an absolute gas of a right-handed arm. He's sitting 97, touching the high 90s on the gum there. I love Ryan Stanek, and I love him as a guy with not only moxie on the mound, but a guy that showed his ability to win and to dominate in Queens with the Mets this past season. I see that in this Mets pitching lab with Desi Drewskull, Jeremy Hefner, and everyone else involved voting really well in 2025. Stanek, you can never have enough flamethrowers in your bullpen, especially guys that can handle high leverage. And down the stretch for the Mets, when they need him most, Stanek was able to step up. That's why the expected ERA is over a full run or lower. That is 4.8 flat ERA there on the season or so versus a 3.46 expected ERA throughout his 55.1 innings with the Mariners and the Mets this past season. Ryan Stanek did a lot of good things for the Mets this past season. Is he a guy that they can live without? Absolutely. David Stearns and I have faith in what his bullpen construction is going to be. But Ryan Stanek, add him to the list. He feels like a guy that feels inevitable to come back to the Mets. Should it not be the soft tossing Phil Maton that the Mets could bring back, similar to Adam Ottavino a year ago, where even though they didn't opt into his option for his contract, they can, however, still bring him back on a lesser AAV deal should they have interest. Maton, I'm not exactly sure if they're going to want to rekindle that relationship, even though he had a great stretch of the regular season for the Mets, not so much in postseason. Flip-flop things, and you have Ryan Stanek here at ups and downs, so that the regular season was nails in postseason and was great for the Mets down the stretch, as I mentioned. Bring him back to this Metropolitan bullpen. Goes without saying, everybody. So there we go, Ryan Stanek. Now let's get into our next pick, and this is going to be another former 2024 New York Met, and Mr. Oh my God, we got to bring Jose Iglesias back, everybody. I will beat this drum as long as they possibly have to or can. Simply put, Jose Iglesias, outside of Mark Vientos, outside of Francisco Lindor, there's no denying that Mr. OMG himself and Jose Iglesias was the most important and pivotal part of this Mets team, of the vibes, of the aura that it gave off, not only with the song OMG himself, but a guy in a pretty much half-season sample size put up one of the best half-season sample sizes in Mets history among eligible second basemen. Jose Iglesias, 337 average, 381 on base, 448 slug, a 2.5 WAR, the most WAR in his career when he's been in the bigs for over a decade, guys, and he's played multiple years of full seasons without a problem. A 137 WRC plus, which means he's 37% better than the average batter in baseball. As selfless as they come, as professional as they come, high leverage, 2-out, runner in scoring position, late in close situations, all those key statistics where you need a guy to step up most. Jose Iglesias was absolutely fantastic for the Mets in all that regard this past season. Not only the vibes, the great glove, the great defense at second base, Jose Iglesias will inevitably return to the Mets because not only the great connection that they built this past year to rally around OMG, which has now been remixed with Pitbull since then, crazy enough, but then to come to find out that even with Jet Williams, Ronnie Mauricio, Luis Angel Acuna, what do all these three have in common? They're MLB-esque ready talents that are ready to try to make a breakout as soon as this upcoming season consistently, and that's why Jose Iglesias is the perfect mentor to put his arm around these young guys, put his wing around them, and get them set and get them ready to be more MLB-ready type players, and that way, as the year goes on, Iglesias' role could decrease should there be the further blossoming of a Luis Angel Acuna, of a Ronnie Mauricio, of a Jet Williams, of maybe even a Brett Beatty for all we know, because the Mets are certainly confident to a degree, and their infield in-house options from AAA up. So, Jose Iglesias, you did so much for the Mets in 2024. Let's keep the party rolling into 2025. It might be a lesser role throughout the year, but it seems like that you know how much you love being here. We brought you in like a family, and you feel like a guy that no matter the situation we decide to put you in, whether that's off the bench or starting at second base, you're going to give it your absolute all when called upon, and that's exactly why we need you back in this clubhouse for another year. Jose Iglesias, everybody, add him to the list. What a tremendous run he had for the Mets this past season. And now the next guy I'm about to talk about is probably, without question, the guy that you guys might have most pessimism towards, and that has everything to do with his age and the reason why the Mets would be acquiring him. But there is a world where this actually could make sense, and that's exactly why we're going to highlight it, everybody. Yes, a Justin Turner reunion. The guy's already 40 years of age, so you might as well bring him back in now, Because if it ain't now, it ain't going to be ever, right? That's how it feels with Justin Turner. But all jokes aside, Justin Turner, folks, who started his tenure of his career with the Mets, sadly didn't stay throughout the past decade plus when he was dominating with the Dodgers, then the Red Sox and the Blue Jays this past season, a little bit with the Seattle Mariners. We finally saw a dip in the power production from Justin Turner, who took around 100 points or a little bit less off in the OPS that we saw, or because of the slugging, with not even a 400 slugging close to this past season. It's still a strong 350 plus on base percentage and a respectable 259 on base percentage, but 11 home runs, 55 RBIs, and a 117 WRC plus. Still 17% better than the average batter in baseball there in that category in Justin Turner. But why would the Mets show interest in Justin Turner? Well, A, he's just a year removed from the most successful offensive season in his career, one could rightfully argue, during his time in that batter's box with, yes, the Boston Red Sox as a 39-year-old, now as a 40-year-old this past season, put up respectable numbers in Toronto, but a lot of things just weren't working well, not only for him, but for that entire team. Then he goes to where all offense goes to die there in rainy Seattle, coloring me shocked there. He didn't put up the most dominant offensive numbers that you'd hope for, even though he showed some flashes, as did Randy Arozarena, as they were both dealt there from the AL East there to what we saw with the Seattle Mariners. But Turner, why would the Mets acquire him again? It would be because, one, Alonso does not come here, and two, the Mets want a short-term DH first base stopgap option. That's how Turner profiles. He's still a proficient bat at this point in his career. He's still a guy that with consistent reps can give you 15 to 20 plus home runs, but similar to JD Martinez, now that he isn't getting any younger, I expect the decline to continue to be more prominent by the year. And for Turner, you're going to have a league average, a decent chunk of above league average at times next season. A guy that can handle first base, not a guy that you want at the hot corner at all. We want Mark Vientos over Justin Turner defensively. That's kind of where we stand right now, where Turner, where he's at with his glove at the age of 40 now. But if you acquire Turner, it would be because of simply having a short-term stopgap option, because you're going after Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in offseason from now. That's why you do it. The same exact reason why the Mets showed a level of interest in Paul Goldschmidt and to a degree in Carlos Santana before they ultimately signed with the Yankees and the Guardians. While the Mets are still trying to bring back Alonso, they're considering their stopgap short-term options should Alonso not land with the Mets and say go elsewhere, because the Mets aren't budging, say they don't want to go beyond 5 years, which I know they don't want to. Maybe they don't even want to go beyond 4 years now, and they just can't reach an agreement for one reason or another. Should that happen, Justin Turner will be one of the better veteran options out there. I know it might be crazy to fathom, but given the veteran leadership that he brings, given the immediate offensive impact that he would still have, yes, defense would be a liability, no question, but to have a short-term fit like Turner, I think you can make the rightful argument that he's still one of the better short-term options that the Mets could consider for first base, to still allow Vientos to have the keys at third base, to see how much you have in him defensively. And if you don't want to, then okay, consider your in-house options that we're going to talk about further in our live show today. Or, okay, consider going all in for Alex Bregman if you haven't already done that then, and then have Breggy at third, Turner at first, and then you have your rotation of Vientos and or others at DH, even though Mark should be playing every day. Needless to say, if the Mets are going to go for a short-term option that isn't Mark Vientos in-house for first base, Justin Turner, add him to the list whether you like it or not, because it is a greater reality should Alonso walk and say go elsewhere. Now, going from JT, everybody, let's get into a guy that was with the Mets this past season and not a decade plus ago, 10, 15 years the last time Justin Turner was in a uniform. Let's talk about a guy that I absolutely admire, that I absolutely love, and I absolutely need back with this Mets team, and a guy that I foresee to come back to this Mets team, and that's Mr. Jesse Winker. We love Jesse. Again, Jesse's numbers did decrease after being acquired by the Mets from the Nationals this past year, but context is key. Winker went from being an everyday player in that corner outfield / DH for the Nationals to being a platoon player, a DH platoon player there, and corner outfield DH platoon in the case of Winker. We saw him make great strides of brilliance with the Mets, not only with the vibes, the aura, the absolute guy that you want on your team and don't want off your team. You don't want to go up against him in postseason play, among other things, just because of how consistently good he is at not only dominating the count, having a tremendous eye at the strike zone that we saw this past season with a 253, 360, 405 clip, but a Jesse Winker whose offensive upside and prowess really fits him beautifully with what this Mets Mets team needs. They're looking for another corner outfield DH fit, and there are a few guys that check off boxes better now than Jesse Winker. They tried with Jock Pearson as a lone platoon DH fit. He signed with the Texas Rangers. They tried with Teoscar Hernandez with more defensive upside at times, you could argue, a more offensive upside. He goes back to LA. They may consider Anthony Santander, that we touched on the platform over the past couple days, and will continue into tonight's live show. But we also know that in the case of Jesse Winker and where the Mets currently stand, he's a guy that stepped up and high leverage, 2-out, runners in scoring position, light and close situations. The guy had a 900 to 1,000 OPS and all those statistics for the most part. He was absolutely tremendous, and he can come in and rake beautifully against right-handed pitching and platoon, not only DH and at times in the corner outfield if you really need him, because say you give an off day to Soto and you put him at DH, or say you give Nimmo an off day, you put him at DH, you can put him in either corner and he'll be competent there even if it isn't great. And then you can platoon him with Starling Marte to then face mostly left-handed pitching should you not trade Marte before the season starts. And if you do, then you can create a different platoon there. Either way, Jesse Winker, with the home run heroics that we saw in the postseason to the great heroics, including that walk-off helmet slamming bomb against the Baltimore Orioles, which kickstarted the Mets' tremendous run they had. Let's not forget, it was that Orioles series at home, and then they went and took care of business that we saw, that huge West Coast trip. They went above 500. I think they went 7-3 or so, because they took care of the White Sox. They took care of the Arizona Diamondbacks in what was a dramatic series, and the Padres, I think they split on, but they did a very solid job in that West Coast trip after that homestand. Jesse Winker was a key part of it. He has all the vibes, all the aura, and all the key numbers when you're supposed to step up most. Unlike what we saw from Alonso all regular season long, Jesse Winker was the polar opposite of, no pun intended with the polar bear. And then what we saw in postseason, both Winker and Alonso alike had a flair for the dramatic, and that will certainly continue for the two in 2025 should they be back in this Mets line together. Jesse Winker, I assume, and I honestly think he will be the most likely to return between himself and some other options right now, or just other guys the Mets are considering for offense in general. I think Jesse Winker, outside of Alonso, is the greatest likelihood to happen, barring changes. But now, guys, going from Jesse Winker, let's get on to our next one. And yes, I know you clicked on the video for this exact reason. We're going to touch on it just here in a second, everybody. But before we do, let's just hear a quick word, a very quick word from our amazing sponsor at BetUS that has you covered with all your sports betting needs. Folks, head over there to betus.com.pa today. Use Wardy's promo code YouTube150. That way you too can get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, $125 on your second and your third, up to $2,000 for whatever you want to bet on. Pardon me, folks. And as you guys can see, I'm hammering the Warriors and the Thunder out right there and their money line to win their respective games. And this is going to be a $30 parlay to win me right around $27.28. So hopefully I'm doubling my money. Should this two-leg parlay hit, good luck to anyone that tails these bets. But please know I'm not a sports betting expert. I just bet responsibly daily here. And make sure you get in on the action with our promo code at YouTube150. That way you two get a 150% bonus on your first deposit, $125 on your second and your third, if I didn't mention that already, for whatever you want to bet on. Good luck, everybody, and shout out once more to our amazing friends and sponsor here, America's #1 sportsbook at BetUS. But as we now hop back into this one, everybody, let's now talk furthermore on what's going on with the potential players that could return to Mets. And yes, we're going to touch just for a minute, a literal minute, on Jacob deGrom, because no, I do not see a world where Jacob deGrom is coming to the Mets this offseason. If Jacob deGrom comes to the Mets in 2025, it is because things have changed by the time we reach the trade deadline and or next offseason. So what that simply means is for deGrom, he still has 3 years left at $115 million on his contract. The Rangers would love to offload that contract. The Mets don't have an issue really taking on bad salary if it means that helps them acquire a really good player, or helps them acquire really good players separately because they took on a bad contract of another player. And the case of deGrom, the only chance I see this relationship at all rekindling is if it really becomes abundantly clear that the Rangers need to salary dump him, that they want to salary dump him, and that the teams show clear desperation for an ace like deGrom, and if he can stay at all healthy leading up to the deadline. If that is the case, and the Rangers are a team on the outside looking in, looking to sell, then that's where we could have a further discussion on Jake. But no, in the meantime, there's not a chance, and you know what, that David Stearns will go out of his way to trade for a aging, veteran Jacob deGrom at the young age of 36 now, who hasn't pitched 100 innings in his career since the 2010s, mind you, is the last time that deGrom has pitched a season of at least 100 innings. Hasn't happened since 2020 has officially begun, and then some. So as we look at all this, and we look at the lack of success the Mets have had in Verlander, Scherzer to a degree, guys beyond age 35 of the rotation, you're not expecting to necessarily get the best prime years out of Jake, nor do you know how healthy he's going to be. With all that uncertainty and knowing how Stearns is operating, I don't see a chance in heck that this happens as of now, but things may change come the trade deadline or certainly next offseason, where he would then have 2 years left of control on his contract, and who knows if the circumstances will be the same or vastly different by then. Simply put, love Jake, would always love to see him back in a Mets uniform if it could happen, but no, I do not foresee it at this point in time. This is more so of, if it happens, it'll happen much later in the year. Not a chance in heck it's going to happen now. But what absolutely can happen now, and something that I really hope happens now, even if this is more of a hope on my end than a reality, that's David Robertson. Of course it's David Robertson. The guy's bound to be 40, but the difference between him and Justin Turner is that he's still pitching and playing like a decade ago. David Robertson is an anomaly. This guy's effing believable. Look at the numbers this past season. 12.4 K per nine, a 3.4 walks per nine. We're looking at a 3 flat ERA, a 3.22 expected ERA. Fastball still sits mid-90s. Changeup is still disgusting. Breaking balls simply aren't fair. David Robertson, who was nails for the Mets in their bullpen back in 2023, then was traded to the Miami Marlins for Marco Vargas, another piece there, when sadly we weren't going anywhere there in that year with Buck Showalter. David loved his time with the Mets. He's won it all with the Yankees. He's a guy that knows what it takes to win in the big market like New York. Loved his time with the Mets, even though it was a short sample size there. Rekindle that relationship. D-Rob is not slowing down. He was one of the best pure relievers of Major League Baseball last season, and I don't care if you got to give him 10 plus mil AAV. It's going to be a one-year deal. If the Mets are willing to bite the bullet on high AAV short-term deals for this bullpen, the way that we really haven't seen David Stearns go too much, at least to the degree of Robertson, let's see if they will show a willingness to do that now. I know he isn't getting any younger, but age is not a factor with Robertson at this point. Look at the Savant numbers. Look at everything down below. He is an anomaly, and I love David Robertson. He would be absolutely fantastic in this Mets bullpen. He would be your perfect setup man there for Edwin Diaz, and that is hopefully with the assumption that Clay Holmes pitches to a strong rotation starter, that you never need to consider him as a potential setup man for Diaz throughout the year. The Mets still have uncertainty with their bullpen. David Robertson makes them 10 times better than where they currently stand. That goes without saying as well. D-Rob, bring him back. What an absolute electric factory that man is. And folks, that is going to do it for our video. So let me know in the comments down below which player or players that we discussed in this one would you most like to see land with the Mets, and which ones do you think are most unlikely, headlined by Jacob deGrom, among some others, obviously, of a potential reunion there in Flushing, Queens with the Amazons. Thank you guys so much again for watching. Be on the lookout, as I'll be live shortly after this video has been posted, or if I'm posting this a day later, then regardless, we're still going to be live later on in the evening, more than likely. Be on the lookout for it, everybody. Thank you so much again for watching. As always, no matter what, let's go Mets, baby. Talk to you guys again real soon. Peace out.